I never intended to hide my success. Life has an uncanny way of revealing people's true colors when they believe you have nothing to offer. My name is Emma Chin, and I've always known that appearances can deceive. Growing up in a modest apartment above my parents' tiny grocery store in San Francisco's Chinatown, I watched them pour their lives into 14-hour workdays just to ensure there was food on our table and a chance for me to succeed. Their lessons shaped me. True worth isn't measured by wealth, but by character and determination. Emma, mai tin du shaik sin dijihui, my mother would say every morning as she straightened my collar, her hands worn from labor but tender as silk. Each day is a new opportunity. While my peers were playing video games or watching TV, I was helping stock shelves, learning inventory management, and poring over accounting books. My father's old calculator became my toy, and numbers my steadfast companion. But beyond the math, I absorbed the ethos of their work. Respect every customer, no matter what they could afford. Treat everyone like family, my father would say. You never know their story. Their sacrifices bore fruit when I earned a full scholarship to Stanford's business school. The day I received my acceptance letter, my mother cried, and my father closed the store early for the first time in 2 decades. We celebrated with a feast of dumplings and my mother's special red bean soup. At Stanford, I worked relentlessly, channeling the grit my parents had instilled in me. Between classes, I developed an innovative supply chain management system that caught the eye of Genesis Tech, a rising Silicon Valley powerhouse. Your algorithm could transform global distribution. Marcus Sterling, their CEO, said during my final presentation, "We'd love for you to join us after graduation." The offer was beyond anything I'd imagined, a senior position with significant stock options. But I surprised Marcus by requesting to start in operations instead, learning the business from the ground up, just like I had in my parents' store. Most people want to start at the top, Marcus remarked, his curiosity piqued. I want to earn it, I replied. How can I lead if I don't understand the foundations? Impressed, he agreed. Officially, I was Senior Vice President of Operations, but few colleagues knew my true title, a secret I preferred. That's how I met James. One rainy Tuesday morning in the company cafeteria, I was immersed in inventory reports when someone jostled my table, nearly spilling my coffee. Oh no, I'm so sorry. A tall man with kind eyes and a crooked tie scrambled to steady the cup. I swear, I'm usually more coordinated. Laughing, I replied, no harm done. I'm Emma. James Wilson. His warm smile tugged at something in me. Let me make it up to you. Coffee's on me. One coffee led to lunch, then dinner, and soon we were inseparable. James worked in marketing, his creative flair complementing my analytical nature. He loved hearing about my work in operations, always curious about my day. You don't just see problems, he said one evening as we strolled along the bay. You see solutions. When he proposed 6 months later, I said yes without hesitation. It wasn't until we began planning the wedding that I encountered his mother, Victoria Wilson. Our first meeting took place in their Pacific Heights mansion, a monument to old money. Victoria greeted me from atop a marble staircase, her demeanor icy. So, she began surveying me through designer glasses. You work in operations? She practically spat the word. Yes, I said evenly, offering no further explanation. And your parents? They own a grocery store in Chinatown. Small business owners, she murmured, exchanging a look with her husband. Well, everyone has to start somewhere. James squeezed my hand but said nothing, a red flag I chose to ignore. In the weeks leading up to our wedding, Victoria's subtle digs and overt meddling became routine. She dismissed my preferences as charmingly simple and insisted on orchestrating everything. Darling, she'd say, patting my hand as if consoling a child. Leave it to those who understand these things. Even my wedding dress, a modern design with traditional Chinese accents, became a point of contention. But dear at the street Francis, wouldn't you prefer something more appropriate? This is appropriate, I replied firmly. It honors both cultures. She pursed her lips. Well, I suppose it's your decision. Though James's first girlfriend, Caroline, always had such elegant taste. European, you know. James, yet again, said nothing. Despite Victoria's interference, the wedding was beautiful. My parents sat in the front row, tears glistening in their eyes. Meanwhile, Victoria held court, regaling her bridge club with tales of James' accomplished cousins. Of course, not everyone marries up, I overheard her say, her tone dripping with disdain. Post-wedding life didn't ease the tension. Monthly family dinners became tests of patience as Victoria's barbs continued. Emma, dear, could you help the housekeeper clear the table? You must feel more at home in the kitchen. Or, James, Caroline just made partner at her law firm. Isn't it inspiring when people reach their full potential? By Christmas, Victoria announced a grand holiday dinner, emphasizing, everyone who matters will be there. Everyone who matters, I echoed. Yes, well, you understand. Family. James stared into his wine glass, silent as always. What Victoria didn't know was that her Christmas dinner would unravel her assumptions in ways she could never predict. But that's a story for another time. We arrived at the Wilson mansion at exactly 6 o'clock. True to form, Victoria had spared no expense. Thousands of twinkling white lights adorned the 3-story facade, and an enormous wreath with a gold bow graced the front door. Through the frosted windows, I glimpsed a dining room that looked like a luxury magazine spread, complete with towering floral arrangements and gleaming crystal. James, Emma, Victoria greeted us, her smile just as polished and cold as the silverware inside. She wore an elegant designer gown, undoubtedly more expensive than what she imagined I earned in a year. James, darling, everyone's gathered in the living room. Emma, perhaps you could lend a hand in the kitchen with the appetizers. Mom, James began, but I touched his arm lightly. It's fine, I said, my voice calm. Victoria's lips curled in a smug smile. So considerate. That's what we love about her, isn't it, James? Always willing to pitch in. James offered a weak laugh and followed her into the living room, leaving me alone in the hallway. In the kitchen, I found Maria, the Wilsons' housekeeper of 15 years, commanding a small team with the precision of a general. When she spotted me, her warm smile reached her eyes. Mrs. Emma, what are you doing in here? You're a guest. Apparently not, I replied with a wry smile. Still, I rolled up my sleeves and began helping her arrange the smoked salmon canapes. The doorbell chimed again, followed by Victoria's delighted exclamations as more guests arrived. Among the voices, one stood out, Caroline. Of course, James' ex-girlfriend had somehow found her way onto the guest list. When it was time for dinner, Maria and I carried the appetizers into the formal dining room. The sight that greeted me was as grand as I'd imagined. A massive table set for 24, each place adorned with Waterford crystal and antique silver. Name cards, written in Victoria's flowing calligraphy, marked every seat. I walked the perimeter of the table, scanning for my name. It wasn't there. Oh, Emma, Victoria's voice rang out, syrupy with fox concern. We're just a bit tight on space at the main table. I'm sure you understand. Family comes first. Why don't you join Maria in the kitchen? You two seem to get along so well. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me, some curious, others uncomfortable. Caroline's smirk was barely concealed behind her champagne glass. James's father, Richard, cleared his throat. Perhaps we can fit another chair. Nonsense, Victoria interrupted smoothly. Emma understands. She's used to more casual settings. My cheeks burned, but I forced a neutral expression. Years of handling tough negotiations had taught me the value of composure. Of course, Victoria, whatever makes you comfortable. As I turned to leave, I caught James's gaze. He looked uneasy but said nothing. Something inside me hardened. Back in the kitchen, Maria wrung her hands. Mrs. Emma, this isn't right. Let me speak to Mrs. Wilson. It's fine, I said, pulling out my phone and sending a quick text. I sat at the small kitchen table and opened my laptop. At least let me fix you a plate, Maria insisted. Thank you, Maria, but I have some urgent work to handle. Major supply chain issue. I offered a reassuring smile as I reviewed the data Marcus had sent. The problems in Asia were more severe than I'd hoped, but not insurmountable. From the dining room came the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Victoria's voice floated above the rest, recounting tales from James's childhood. Caroline chimed in with anecdotes from their high school days. 20 minutes passed, then 30. The doorbell rang again. Maria moved to answer it, but I stopped her. That's for me. I opened the door to find Marcus Sterling, CEO of Genesis Tech, standing in his signature tailored suit, a look of mild concern on his face. "Emma," he greeted me warmly. "Apologies for intruding on your Christmas dinner, but we need your input on the Asia situation." "Of course," I said, gesturing for him to come in. "Though technically, I'm not at the dinner table." His brow furrowed. "Not at the table? Why not? Why don't we find out together?" We walked into the dining room, where the hum of conversation stopped abruptly. 24 heads swiveled toward us, curiosity and confusion etched on their faces. Victoria stood quickly, her expression hard to read. "I'm so sorry, sir. The help isn't supposed to let visitors in unannounced. Emma, you should know better." Marcus blinked, then turned to me. "Help? I'm confused. Why is my senior vice president of operations eating in the kitchen?" The silence was deafening. Victoria's face drained of color. "Senior vice president?" "Yes," Marcus said, oblivious to, or perhaps enjoying, the tension. "Emma's leadership has been pivotal to Genesis Tech's success. Her supply chain system is groundbreaking. Surely her husband has mentioned her accomplishments." All eyes turned to James, who looked like he might faint. I didn't know," he stammered. "You never asked," I said quietly. Caroline's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering against the hardwood floor. No one moved to clean it up. But you work in operations," Victoria sputtered. "You said." "I do," I replied, my tone calm. "As the senior vice president, I chose to start at the ground level, just as my parents did in their modest grocery store." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Speaking of which, Emma, your mother's dumplings are extraordinary. The board loved them at our last meeting." Victoria collapsed into her chair, her shock plain. "Board meetings?" "Yes," Marcus continued. "Emma's one of our youngest board members. Her stock options alone are worth—" "Marcus," I interjected gently, "perhaps we should handle the Asia situation elsewhere. I wouldn't want to disrupt the family dinner." I turned to Victoria, my gaze steady. "Thank you for making my place in this family so abundantly clear. It's helped me make some important decisions." "Emma, wait," James said, finally standing. "We need to talk about this." "We do," I agreed. "But not tonight. Tonight, I have a company to run." As I left, I paused. "Oh, and Victoria, those dumplings you dismissed last month, they were a hit at our last gala, $200 per plate, quite the success with the governor." Marcus and I walked out into the crisp night air. As we approached his car, he glanced at me. "I've been wondering how long you let them treat you like that." I smiled faintly. "Sometimes it's better to let people show you who they really are." "And James?" "That's a decision for another day." As the car pulled away, my phone buzzed relentlessly with messages. From James, from Richard, even one from Caroline. But the one from Victoria stood out. "Emma, dear, I think there's been a misunderstanding." I turned off my phone. Asia needed my attention, and my life needed a fresh perspective. As my mother always said, each day is a new opportunity, and tonight, I'd seized mine. The next morning, I woke up in my private office at Genesis Tech, the resolution to the Asia crisis neatly tucked away in my outbox. A late-night video conference with our Shanghai partners and decisive action had steered the company away from disaster. As sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. "Mrs. Chen." Sarah, my assistant, peeked in. "Your husband is in the lobby. Again. This is his third attempt since dawn." I sighed and glanced at my phone. 47 missed calls, 93 texts, and an avalanche of emails. Victoria alone had sent 28 increasingly frantic messages. "Send him up, Sarah. It's time we talked." When James walked in, he looked nothing like his usual polished self. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, and his tie was nowhere to be seen. His eyes darted around the room, taking in the sleek office, the awards on the walls, and the panoramic view of the bay. "Emma," he began, his voice hesitant. "This is really your office." "For the past 2 years," I replied, motioning for him to sit. "Not that you ever asked." He sank into one of the visitor chairs, his gaze dropping. "I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what? That I'm more than the girl your mother looks down on. That I've built a career while you stood by and said nothing. When exactly was I supposed to do that, James? In between your mother's jabs or your silence?" He winced. "Mom's difficult." "Difficult?" I repeated, crossing my arms. She made me eat in the kitchen on Christmas, and you let her. I was going to say something, but you didn't. You never do. My voice was calm but firm. 2 years, James. 2 years of watching you laugh at your mother's jokes about my background. 2 years of staying silent while she paraded Caroline in front of me. 2 years of you being ashamed of me, or at least of what you thought I was. I wasn't ashamed, he protested. Weren't you? Then why didn't you ever ask about my work? Why didn't you visit me here? Why didn't you defend me? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. The board approved your Asia strategy, he said. Stocks up 12% already. Excellent work. Thank you, Marcus. I'll finalize the timeline today. When I hung up, James stared at me, his face pale. You report directly to Marcus Sterling. I have for years, I said, my tone matter of fact. Remember last Christmas when I missed your mother's party because of overtime? I was in Tokyo, finalizing a billion-dollar deal, but you assumed I was working a shift at a warehouse. Emma, I didn't know, he pleaded. Please, give me another chance. I shook my head. That's the problem, James. Now that you know I'm successful, you want to make things right. What about when you thought I was just a grocery store girl? Didn't I deserve respect then? The silence between us was deafening, and in it, I found my answer. A knock on the door interrupted us. Sarah appeared again, looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Chen, Mrs. Wilson is here. She's insistent. I nodded. Sent her in. Victoria swept in, dressed impeccably as always, though her usual composure was absent. Her eyes flitted around the room, widening as they landed on my credentials and accolades. Emma, darling, she began, her voice sticky sweet. We need to clear up this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I arched an eyebrow. You mean where you made me eat in the kitchen, or where you've spent 2 years treating me like I was beneath you? Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I didn't know who you were. And that, I said sharply, is the root of the problem. You judge me based on my parents' grocery store. Tell me, Victoria, how much do you think Genesis Tech paid for my supply chain system? She blinked, floundering. I don't. $300 million. Before I even graduated. That modest store taught me everything about respect and hard work. Concepts you still haven't grasped. Emma, James interjected. People can change. Give us a chance to make this right. I opened my laptop, revealing an email from my lawyer. 2 years, James. Have given you plenty of chances. I met his gaze. I'm filing for divorce. Victoria gasped. You can't. Think of James's future. I am, and mine. I stood. The prenup you insisted on. It protects my assets as much as his. And the Pacific Heights mansion. I bought it last year. Check the property records. James sank back, stunned. All this time, while you let your mother belittle me, I was building something real. I pressed a button on my desk. Sarah, please escort Mrs. Wilson out. James, you have until Friday to move your things to your parents' house. Emma, think of what people will say. Victoria exclaimed as security arrived. They'll say what I should have said years ago. Respect isn't earned by a bank account. It's earned by treating people with dignity. I turned to James. Your mother spent 2 years trying to make me feel small. She only succeeded in showing me how small she is. As they left, I stood by the window, watching the fog roll over the bay. A text from my mother appeared on my phone. Mai tan du shaik sin de jihui. Each day is a new opportunity. Smiling, I drafted a press release about Genesis Tech's triumph. The stock would close at a record high that day. But my true success wasn't in the numbers. It was in knowing I'd reclaimed my self-worth. 6 months later, I closed another quarterly report. The divorce was final, the house sold, and Victoria had a new cautionary tale for her bridge club. None of it mattered anymore. Sarah knocked. Mrs. Chen, your parents are here for lunch. I closed my laptop, smiling. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And the best revenge? It's not served cold in a kitchen. It's served in a corner office, surrounded by those who saw your worth all along. I never intended to hide my success. Growing up in a modest Boston family, I learned early on that humility and perseverance mattered more than status. My father, a mechanic, would return home with grease-stained hands and a weary smile, while my mother worked back-to-back shifts as a nurse, determined to put me through college. Emily, she'd often say, success isn't measured by what you own, it's defined by who you are. Her words stayed with me. By 23, I had started a tech consulting firm in my garage. 2 years later, it had grown into MTech Solutions, now worth over $200 million. Yet, I kept a low profile, preferring the quiet satisfaction of working behind the scenes. Then I met Michael. Our paths crossed at a neighborhood coffee shop. I was absorbed in reviewing contracts, dressed in my usual jeans and sweater, when he accidentally knocked over my coffee. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, fumbling to save my papers. I couldn't help but laugh. "It's fine," I reassured him, even though those documents were acquisition agreements worth millions. His genuine panic was oddly charming. "Let me make it up to you," he insisted. "I'm Michael, by the way." "Emily," I said, smiling. "And sure, I'll take you up on that coffee." That coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a relationship. Michael was unlike anyone I'd ever met, kind, down to earth, and a high school teacher who genuinely loved his job. He never asked about my wealth, mainly because he didn't know about it. I told him I worked as an executive assistant at MTech Solutions. It wasn't entirely untrue. I did oversee administrative tasks, though as the company's owner, not an assistant. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I had. Things were perfect until I met his mother, Victoria. Victoria Patterson was the picture of social ambition. Her home was filled with imitation designer goods, and her conversations revolved around imaginary connections to high society. From the start, she disapproved of me. "A secretary?" she asked during our first dinner, her tone sharp. "Michael, darling, wasn't there a surgeon's daughter I introduced you to?" "Mom," Michael said, clearly annoyed, but she pressed on. "I just think, given our family status, you should aim higher. The Pattersons have always married well." The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael had already shared the truth of their middle-class life, propped up by credit card debt and appearances. "I like my job," I replied simply. "It's fulfilling." Victoria sniffed dismissively. "Well, someone has to do those things, I suppose." Her passive-aggressive remarks became a fixture of family gatherings. At Christmas, while others received thoughtful gifts, I got a plain office planner. "For keeping your boss's schedule," she said with a smirk. Michael often apologized privately but never confronted her outright. I understood. Family dynamics can be tricky. Then came the announcement that changed everything. One Sunday dinner, Victoria stormed into the room, brandishing a newspaper. "MTech Solutions is looking for a new CEO. This is my chance." I nearly choked on my wine. While it was true we were seeking a CEO, the search was highly selective. "You're applying?" Michael asked, visibly surprised. "Of course. After 20 years in middle management, it's time I moved into the big leagues," she declared, turning to me. "Emily, put in a good word for me, would you? Though I doubt your recommendation carries much weight." I maintained a neutral expression. "I'll see what I can do." "Don't bother," she said with a wave. "I've already called in favors. The board will be impressed by my credentials." Little did she know, I was the board. The following week, Victoria arrived at MTech Solutions for her interview, dressed in an over-the-top suit. I watched from my private office as she loudly proclaimed her qualifications in the lobby. "Mrs. Patterson," my assistant called. "The board is ready for you." Victoria straightened her posture and marched into the conference room. She froze the moment she saw me seated at the head of the table, flanked by board members. "Emily," she sputtered. "What are you doing here?" "Running my company," I said evenly. "Please have a seat." Her face paled as the realization hit. This can't be." "It is," one board member confirmed. "Ms. Walker is our founder and majority shareholder." Victoria's carefully curated facade began to crumble. She stumbled into a chair as I opened her application file. "Let's discuss your qualifications," I said, my tone all business. Her resume was riddled with embellishments, and I questioned each one. Her fabricated achievements and supposed connections unraveled quickly under scrutiny. "I think we're done here," I concluded. "Your application is disqualified due to misrepresentation." "You can't do this," she cried. "This is personal." "No, it's professional," I replied. "But since you brought up personal matters, yes, I've endured your insults and condescension for months. This isn't revenge, Victoria. It's accountability. She stormed out, muttering threats about exposing me to Michael. Go ahead, I thought, already reaching for my phone. It was time Michael knew the truth. Mom just called me crying, Michael said as he walked into my office, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. She said, "You're her boss?" Emily, what's going on? I motioned for him to sit down, taking a deep breath. Michael, there's a lot I need to explain. I wasn't completely honest about who I am. I didn't want to complicate things between us, but now it's unavoidable. Can I show you something? Minutes later, Michael stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in my office, his eyes scanning the breathtaking view of the city and the nameplate on my desk, Emily Walker, founder and CEO. He turned to the wall of awards and newspaper articles featuring my company, MTech Solutions. So, you're not a secretary, he said, his voice measured. No, I'm not, I admitted, standing beside him. I founded MTech when I was 23. The company your mom mocked me for working at? I built it from the ground up. He looked at me, hurt flashing in his eyes. Why would you hide something like this? Why lie? I wanted someone to see me, not my bank account, I said. Do you know how many people have tried to get close to me because of my money or status? I wanted to experience love for who I am, not for what I own. Michael sighed, his expression softening. I understand that, but you let my mother treat you horribly. You could have stopped this months ago. And what would that have accomplished? I asked. Proving her obsession with status, right? That wealth is what defines someone's value. I didn't want to play her game. Michael ran a hand through his hair. You're right. I should have defended you. I failed you there. Before I could respond, the office door burst open, and Victoria stormed in, dragging her husband George behind her. Her face was red with fury. There she is, the liar, the manipulator, she screeched. George, ever the quiet observer, stepped forward. Emily, this feels inappropriate. Using your position to reject Victoria over personal disagreements. I recorded the entire interview, I said, cutting him off. With the press of a button, Victoria's stumbling responses played over the speaker. This wasn't personal. Your wife lied on her application and misrepresented her qualifications. The board made their decision based on facts. Victoria's face twisted with rage. You think you've won? Just wait until everyone hears about this. The so-called genius CEO who pretended to be a secretary just to trick her way into our family. Mom, stop. Michael's voice thundered, silencing the room. Just stop. Do you hear yourself? You're humiliating all of us. Humiliating? She's the liar here. Victoria spat. No, Michael said firmly. Emily lied about one thing, her job. You've lied about everything else. Our family status, your connections, your accomplishments. It's all been a facade, and I'm done enabling it. Victoria's mouth fell open, and George placed a hand on her shoulder. Let's go, Victoria, he murmured. This has gone too far. This isn't over, she hissed as he led her out. You'll regret this, both of you. As the doors slammed behind them, silence filled the office. Michael turned to me, his face weary but resolute. I'm sorry for everything my family's put you through, but I need to know, where do we go from here? Before I could answer, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Walker, sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Patterson is in the lobby, causing a scene. Security is asking how to proceed. Michael and I exchanged a look. We handle it together, he said. I pressed the intercom, send security footage to my laptop and stand by. Only intervene if she disrupts operations. On the screen, we watched Victoria pacing the lobby, stopping employees to rant about me. Most ignored her, some rolling their eyes. But then she pulled out her phone. She's stealing clients, Victoria shouted, waving the phone in the air. I have proof right here, financial documents from Patterson Insurance. My blood ran cold. Those are confidential. How did she get them? Michael's face paled. She works in middle management at Patterson. She must have accessed the files. I was already dialing. Mr. Patterson, this is Emily Walker. Your employee, Victoria Patterson, is in my lobby threatening to expose confidential client information. Yes, I'll hold. Victoria's voice blared over the feed. I'll ruin her. She's been poaching our best clients. A sharp voice cut through the chaos on the screen. Victoria Patterson. A poised woman in a suit approached, flanked by two men. I'm Susan Chen, legal counsel for Patterson Insurance. You're hereby suspended pending investigation for violation of your non-disclosure agreement and attempted corporate espionage. Victoria stumbled back. No, you don't understand. We understand perfectly, Susan said coldly. Your access to confidential files has been monitored for weeks. This public outburst only confirmed our suspicions. Michael watched in stunned silence as his mother was escorted away, her protest growing fainter. He turned to me. Emily, I didn't know she was capable of this. It's not your fault, I said gently, but we need to address this openly, with your family, with mine, and with ourselves. Michael nodded, his voice steady. Together. As security led a stunned Victoria out of the building, Michael turned to me, his brow furrowed. You knew about her job performance? I found out during the merger discussions, I admitted. I planned to help her transition into a role better suited to her skills. That's part of why I kept my identity hidden. I needed to fully understand the situation before making decisions that would impact your family. Mr. Patterson, standing nearby, shook his head with a faint smile. Always thinking of others, Emily. It's one of the reasons I agreed to the merger in the first place. He straightened his jacket and added, Don't worry about Victoria. We'll handle the legal aspects with discretion for Michael's sake. After he left, silence settled in the office. Michael sat across from me, staring out the window, lost in thought. I need some time, he said at last. This is a lot. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. Take all the time you need. At the door, he paused, looking back at me. For what it's worth, I fell in love with Emily the secretary. Knowing you're Emily the CEO doesn't change that. It just means I have more to learn about you. After he left, I remained at my desk, watching the city lights flicker on as night fell. My phone buzzed. A message from George, Michael's father. Victoria's home, devastated. She knows what she's lost. When you're ready, we should talk. All of us. Family shouldn't end like this. The week that followed, I buried myself in work, giving Michael and his family the space they needed. Meanwhile, the media caught wind of Victoria's public meltdown. Corporate espionage involving two merging companies was too scandalous to ignore. Fortunately, both companies' PR teams managed to keep the damage under control. One late evening, as I was reviewing merger documents, my assistant buzzed in. Ms. Walker, the Patterson family is here to see you. They entered together, George leading with calm authority. Michael, his expression unreadable. And finally Victoria, her usual confidence replaced by a tentative, vulnerable air. She wore simple business attire, a stark contrast to her usual designer wardrobe. Emily, George began, his tone measured. We need to talk. All of us. Victoria stepped forward, wringing her hands. I've been in therapy this past week, intensive sessions. Losing the promotion, it broke me. Everything I built my identity around, my importance, my connections, it all crumbled. You tried to hold on by grabbing more, I said quietly. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. When I saw the CEO posting, I convinced myself I deserved it, that everyone else had been holding me back. Then learning the truth about you, it shattered what little I had left. Mom, Michael said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder, there's more you need to tell her. Victoria took a shaky breath. I've struggled for years. Shopping addiction, fabricating stories about our family's status. It all started when George's business hit trouble a decade ago. Instead of facing reality, I created a fantasy. It felt easier than admitting we weren't who I pretended us to be. George spoke up, his voice heavy with regret. And I enabled it. I thought keeping up appearances would keep us afloat. But it only made things worse. The merger, is it still happening? I nodded. Yes. Victoria's actions hurt both companies, but they don't erase 2 decades of service. The merger includes a retirement package for long-term employees. It's hers if she wants it. Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. After everything I've done, everyone deserves a second chance, I said. But there are conditions. Continued therapy, working with HR on a transition plan, and most importantly, honesty with yourself and others. Victoria broke down, her carefully constructed walls finally crumbling. I'm sorry, Emily, for everything. For how I treated you, the things I said. Michael moved to my side and took my hand. We've all learned something, he said. Mom about honesty, Dad about enabling, me about standing up for what's right, and Emily about trusting people with the truth. I finished. Moving forward. 2 months later, Victoria retired quietly. The merger proceeded smoothly, and she found new purpose volunteering at a financial literacy program, helping others avoid the mistakes she made. At our wedding the following spring, she gave a heartfelt speech that left few dry eyes. A year ago, I thought status and appearances were everything, but my daughter-in-law taught me that true worth lies in how you treat others. Emily, thank you for giving our family a second chance, not because you're a CEO, but because you're a compassionate human being. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. We had rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of truth, moving past lies and pretenses. Looking around, I saw our merged family, George chatting with my father about business, Victoria helping my mother arrange flowers, our employees meeting with relatives. Success, I realized, meant nothing without people to share it with. Happy, Michael whispered. Very, I replied with a grin. Though I do miss that secretary desk sometimes. He laughed. Well, you did say your assistant's going on maternity leave. Don't tempt me, I teased. I might just go undercover again. Victoria overheard and joined our laughter, genuine this time, free from pretense. She found something far more valuable than status. Peace with who she truly was. As the celebration continued, I thought back to that first accidental coffee spill. It had led to this moment, proving that sometimes life's biggest blessings come disguised as chaos. Looking around at the people I loved, I knew success wasn't measured in dollars or titles. It was measured in second chances, hard truths, and the courage to be authentically yourself.